Through to the committee, we're just waiting to make sure we have quorum. Just one moment.
Okay, hopefully everyone can hear me.
We can hear you online. At least I can.
All right, Stuart Houlihan speaking, and we do have quorum, so we'll call the meeting to order. And this meeting will be live streamed, recorded, and available on the internet by visiting the county's website. The meeting will be conducted as a hybrid meeting, and there'll be in-person and virtual electronic participation in accordance with the county's procedural bylaw. Just keep going reading. So point number 2, do we have any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature of thereof? I can't see the screens, so hearing none, we'll continue. Next is the confirmation of the agenda, and hopefully everyone had a chance to review the agenda. Here.
Through to the chair, we just need a mover and seconder to confirm the agenda. The motion would be that the agenda for the Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting of May 5th, 2025 be confirmed.
I would move that, Stu.
Thank you. Irene? Anyone else? Seconder? Sarah?
All those in favor?
Aye.
It looks like that carries.
All right, the number 4 is minutes of the previous meeting. And hopefully everyone had a chance to review those minutes. And the Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting minutes from the meeting held March 18th, 2025. And the motion is that the minutes of the Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting held March 18th, 2025 be adopted as presented.
I'll move that, Stu.
Irene. And the seconder?
I second.
Sorry, I can't see the screen, so I'm not sure.
Through the chair, who was the seconder?
Sorry, that's me, Justin.
Justin, perfect. Thank you.
All those in favor? Okay. Any opposed? Probably not. So that's carried. All right, for the announcements section, I have a couple of things I wanted to mention, but I'll give others the opportunity first. Does anyone have any announcements? Yes, Irene.
I just want to let the committee know that I was able and honored to attend the Community Living had their 60th anniversary celebration. They had like a lunch with the mayor, and I think they must have had well over 120 people there at the Elks Hall. It was an amazing celebration, and quite a few people mentioned to me that they were appreciative of the work that this committee's doing on accessibility.
Very nice to hear. Thank you.
Sorry.
Stu's looking at me, so I guess it's my turn. It's Sarah speaking. First, before I get into my item, I did just want to call attention to today's date. It is the date of recognition for the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls here in Canada. And then also what I want to speak to is last week I had the opportunity to go and do a television interview with Debbie McDonald-Moynes from Communicares for Seniors. And this was at the Cogeco station. I'm looking at Anne Van Black right now because she just happened to be there as well. And it was a 25-minute interview talking about the work of the Accessibility Advisory Committee, our successes, what barriers still exist. And also what is noteworthy is I was interviewed in tandem with the accessibility coordinator for Belleville municipality, and they actually have a designated staff person that oversees that committee and all the AODA work. So now that I've had that opportunity to meet with her, we actually talked about a way to bring our committee work together so that we don't need to reinvent the wheel, see what Belleville's doing, and how we can join forces. So that was a really neat opportunity. Everyone's frozen.
I'll just pause and see if they can, not sure if they can hear us.
Yeah, there was a bit of a blip, but it seems okay now.
For audio, video's still frozen.
What's that? Video's still frozen?
Yes.
Artie, was that you talking before?
Sorry, I left my.
Through the chair to committee, as Sarah just mentioned, we just ran into a technical difficulty. It does look like you guys are all connected, and if you can hear us correctly, which I also assume is happening, just bear with me. I'm just going to make sure the YouTube stream isn't interrupted. So just a couple more minutes and we'll get back to it. Thank you.
All right, it looks like everything is back and working again. Hopefully everyone was able to hear the good news that Sarah was mentioning about the interview. So that's very exciting, and it's great to hear that people appreciate. It's good to hear the feedback. And I do like the idea of working with other municipalities as a way to not reinvent the wheel and forward what we're all trying to do here. So that's excellent. Does anyone else have any other announcements they'd like to share? Okay, hearing none, I'll continue with mine then. I have probably three, and the first one I'll mention is that Irene and I had a meeting with the planning group and with Angela, who wasn't able to make it tonight, with Mike Michaud and Ryan Arcan. And the objective of the meeting was to better understand the planning process and for us to understand how we can work better with the planners and how we get feedback after we do a site plan review and submit it into the planning group. How do we close the loop and get feedback? It was a very good discussion, and all I'll say right now is that they've encouraged us to contact the planner directly if we want to get feedback. We were hoping to get a presentation to our committee. It was offered by the manager of the planning department, Michael Michaud, but I understand he's no longer working with the county. So we will be reaching out to Angela to find out how we can restart that, because I think a presentation to our group on how the planning works and how we can help change the mindset a bit and have them think about accessibility during the planning process would be very beneficial to all. At that point, if we're able to get a presentation, then it would be more formally introduced in the agenda. But for now, I just wanted to share that much. And Irene, if you had any other comments that you wanted to add.
I don't think so, Stuart. I think you're right. We could get into the nitty-gritty during a presentation. The one thing, though, that I think the committee might find interesting, I sort of knew this, but hadn't hit me over the head with it the way it was so simple. We had someone there from that does building code, and he explained that anything inside the buildings is building code. Anything outside the buildings is site plan, which is what we get to comment on. And that the building code is being made equal across Canada, so they're looking at continuity there. But it's because a lot of times we don't get information about what's going on inside the building, but he said, don't worry, the building code covers that very in a detailed, enforceable way. So it was good, kind of good news.
And that's a good point, because that is an area that we struggled with. We would see on a plan a block diagram of the inside of an apartment, and we could tell there is no way it was accessible. And we were looking for ways to give that feedback. So it was important distinction. Another topic I wanted to mention is that from talking with a couple of people, I would like to find ways to simplify our meetings and have more discussion about our topics, as opposed to the strict formality of the meetings. Now, that formality must be maintained, but I will look for ways to encourage discussion amongst our members as well. And related to that, in the next few weeks, I want to reach out to each member of our committee and help understand what their interests are and how they want to be active and work with us, instead of just limiting our discussions to our meetings. Also related to that is, I'd like to have people not be surprised when we ask for a volunteer for a topic or a working group. I think I'd like to increase communication so that people would have advanced notice on these topics and be prepared to volunteer when we do call for the volunteers. So I'll be starting those discussions, and hopefully we'll find ways to streamline our meetings and have more discussion. And that is what I wanted to share in the announcements section. Unless there's anything else, we can go on to the next section, and that would be the presentations. And we have Anne Van Vleck that has joined us, and Anne is the Vital Signs Coordinator for the County Foundation. And I believe, Anne, you're going to be presenting the Vital Signs Focus Report.
I will. Thanks, Stu, for that.
Yep, go ahead.
I'm going to share slides in a minute, but I just wanted to say a couple things first. I'd really appreciate this committee's time, and I was fortunate enough to meet with this committee two years ago, I think it was, and the input was wonderful. I learned a great deal, and I'd especially like to thank Irene, who was one of our featured speakers on that report. So this year's Vital Signs report, this is a sneak preview of what the report will be this year. This is not a report on something that's already happened. And so I think that you'll find the topic of this year's Vital Signs report is probably near and dear to your heart. It very much would correspond with the work that you do, and I will be looking for this committee's input. So just wanted to preface that. Well, just bring up my slides here. All right. Can everyone see the slides okay? Yes? Okay, I can't really tell, but for sure. So just for those of you who may not be familiar with Vital Signs is data, community well-being data that's collected by the County Foundation. The County Foundation is one of 208 foundations across Canada. And their role, and I've got the vision statement there at the bottom of this slide. In the case of Prince Edward County's Vital County Foundation, the vision is working together to build a place where everyone belongs and all can thrive. And Vital Signs is it's not produced by all of the foundations, but the majority of them do report on community well-being, and there's several reasons for doing that. One is to identify gaps that may exist also to highlight successes, of course, but knowing what the gaps are, then it can inform decision making when it comes to where the resources get best used. Also for community organizations, they'll use the data for advocacy and for applying for grants. So this year's Vital Signs report, 2025, that's upcoming, that's released in early October. And so that report is not only viewed locally and shared locally, but it's also available at a national level. The Community Foundations of Canada shares the reports from the various foundations. And so this year's upcoming report the topic is connecting communities, but it focuses on the role of social infrastructure in bringing people together. So I'll get into what the social infrastructure actually entails. So in this case, social infrastructure, it's divided into sort of three categories. One would be places for social care, which could include, for example, hospitals, schools, child care facilities. And then social and cultural infrastructure could include, for example, community centers, libraries, recreation facilities, green spaces, places where people can gather. And then there's other, which may not fit exactly into social infrastructure, but again, especially in our rural community, very important to people's well-being. Things like accessible transportation, public transportation, availability of banks, fuel stations, grocery outlets, that kind of thing as well. So this report explores how that social infrastructure, those public spaces that support community and social life, how they help to foster connection, inclusion, and well-being across Prince Edward County. And I know that this committee in the past couple of years has changed the focus a bit, or evolved it perhaps, to include more than just structure and accessibility in physical ways. It also can include accessibility for people of low income, for example. Can they access events? And so it's a broader context, which also, in the case of Vital Signs, a very broad context there too. So Vital Signs, it's really data that drives change. And so there's the reasons for doing these reports are to highlight, in this report in particular, to highlight the importance of human-centered approaches to urban planning. And I heard some of that already in your meeting tonight, and how you're involved in the planning process, have some input in the planning process. So an approach that prioritizes belonging, inclusion, and well-being. So looking at it more than just from an engineering point of view. Also to identify existing strengths and gaps in our local infrastructure that affect accessibility, equity, and connection. And last but not least, but to inspire action among our community champions, volunteers, neighbors, local leaders to strengthen the infrastructure that supports social connection. We can't rely on government and large funds to do all of that work for us. It really, a lot of it is, a lot of that change can happen at the grassroots level. So Vital Signs reports, the data is available year round. And there's a lot of requests for data. It's available in a public website. It's pecdata.ca. I should have put that on this slide. And there's also, usually there's an annual report, which has a slightly different focus from year to year. And so this is the focus this year. But what happens with those reports is they're published, they're available online. The data is also updated monthly, the regular data. The reports are available, a few are printed. They're available through the local newspapers. Last year we did a 2-page spread in both the Gazette and the Times, and featured nationally through Community Foundations of Canada. It's also presented locally. I usually do webinars during the year on these topics and in-person presentations across Prince Edward County. And that data is used for guiding decisions, and it's used by our municipal leaders, our planners, and our funders to shape priorities and allocate resources. And it fuels advocacy. That's where the local organizations especially use these reports to advocate for change and apply for funding that supports community well-being. So these reports, in the case of Prince Edward County, have been produced since 2013. So in that time period, there hasn't been one every year, but recently there have been, but there's been quite a number of reports. And so getting into more of the nitty-gritty of the upcoming report, so it deals with why connection matters and why social connection, or our ability to get together to be socially connected, is so important. And there's a quote here: social connection is such a basic feature of human experience that when we're deprived of it, we suffer. And it's true. Especially since COVID, a lot more studies have been done regarding loneliness, and experiencing loneliness or social isolation has been linked with a higher risk of premature death. In some cases, it's actually in the States, there's reports that equate it to loneliness as health effect is equated to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And Canada ranks as the loneliest among 11 developed countries, including the UK and United States. So it really is, there are issues that we really need to look at. So there's many barriers to connection. I just listed a few here, ones that are more focused on infrastructure. But for example, a car-centric urban design. And in a rural area like Prince Edward County, it's really hard to get around that, to have walkability or not use of cars. Public transportation certainly is something that's more and more in development and more available. Inaccessible public spaces, and here we have a lot of older buildings. You know better than I do. A lot of older buildings that it's very difficult to try to make them fully accessible. Infrastructure that divides, and examples would be neighborhoods perhaps that aren't as well maintained, and so it results in inequities. Another one that I've seen, another example I've seen, is with cities that have major highways that cut right through the center of them. So it really divides the city, makes connection more difficult. Also, decline of what's called third places, and a third place is really defined as a place other than your home or your workplace where people might gather. And so there used to be more churches, and local schools were often more places where people could gather. And as we centralize these services, and as churches decline, we're losing some of those third places. They could also be local cafes, for example. Think of Wellington. Years past, the Wellington Grill was a great gathering spot. So centralization of services. We've had, the school system has centralized and lost a lot of the more rural local schools, and the same for healthcare, number of services like that. And also digital disconnection. People relying really heavily on digital communications and not getting together in person as often, and it doesn't replace that human connection. So when I'm looking at the data this year for infrastructure assets and strengths in Prince Edward County, I'm looking at Prince Edward County as a whole for many of the aspects, and much of this report will be mapped. This example here is a map that shows the 9 wards in Prince Edward County, and that's part of how the data will be described is by wards. And my reason actually for doing this is not only that it's regional and we can focus on those regions, but it's also the data is more available. in some cases by wards. So for example, in wards, you'd have recreation committees that I can call upon for data. You would have counselors who would be well aware of aspects of their community. So that's part of the reason for that regionalization. But when the report comes out, you'll see other maps that show, for example, heat maps showing age groupings. So it shows where the older population is and the younger population in Prince Edward County, number of those kind of maps. So as I look at the assets, and this is just preliminary, I've done at this point in time community conversations with about 50 residents and representing all 9 wards so far. I still have a long way to go in consultations, including hopefully some of the folks on your committee. But when I look at some of the assets and strengths in the community, we really we are really blessed when we look at the number of community and culture throughout many of our communities, parks and green spaces, not only municipal ones, but we have a richness of conservation areas and wildlife protected areas too. Recreation facilities, I know our municipality has tried to make sure that they're distributed throughout the community, that they're available, and also postal outlets. I had somebody say to me, I don't, in this age, does a postal outlet really matter? It really does matter for some. We look at small businesses who rely, for example, on the post office perhaps to get, to be able to ship out their goods and receive them and that type of thing. And public libraries. So I'm sure there's many more assets. Those are the ones at this point in time that I've identified. And just I wanted to mention while I've got this map up on the screen, if we look at this regionally, look at Ameliasburg on the northern side. One of the things that became more apparent when we did a heat map showing age, population concentrations by age in Prince Edward County, it revealed that in the north part of Ameliasburg, there's more youth population there than had been realized. And the municipality, when they looked at that, realized there's not really enough infrastructure there to support the needs of that youth population. So that's where mapping can start to visually show some of those gaps that we might not otherwise realize. So then also just a preliminary list of gaps that were identified by those residents and stakeholders that I've spoken to so far, include limited public transit in the outlying areas. So that, there is transit on demand. You can call and have pickup to pickup points for the public transit, but still the hours are short. It's just weekdays during business hours primarily. So still lots of areas to be filled in many ways for public transit. There's inadequate access to medical walk-in clinics. Shortage of licensed childcare spaces. There's a shortage of childcare in general, but also distributed throughout the rural areas. There's quite a distance for some parents to go. And lack of accessible and informal gathering spaces, those third places that I mentioned before. And few safe, welcoming spaces for youth to connect. And this has been identified for a few years now by youth. And also insufficient infrastructure for people with mobility challenges. And that could also, not just mobility challenges, but people with strollers and so on, sidewalks that are uneven, lack of ramps, and inconsistent access to public washrooms, especially year round. We have more washrooms in the summer during the tourist seasons, of course. So those are just, that's the starting of what I've identified, but that's county-wide. I haven't started to really get down too much into the ward level of where are the assets and the gaps. So this next slide is where I'm going to ask for input from this Accessibility Advisory Committee, because no one knows better than yourselves, the local knowledge and lived experience to be able to help identify where some of the gaps are for accessibility. And so sort of two categories of what I would be asking of you is what progress has been made recently toward greater accessibilities? And for example, what are recent improvements? Accessible entrances, pathways, signage, beach wheelchair mats, accessible picnic tables. I have read on the website there's 3 reports there from the last 3 years, the progress that's been made by this committee, and it's impressive. A lot of work's been done, and also to some extent what the gaps are, but I'd like to get into more nitty-gritty with you about that. And also then from you, the ongoing gaps and the barriers to help identify what are those remaining challenges and areas that need attention to ensure full inclusion. So this might in some ways seem like a repetition of your reports, but I think that it helps to I think it just helps to highlight it and to emphasize it. So I've got a note here about timeline, my timeline, and I hope it works with yours. I would really appreciate this kind of input by the end of June of this year. That gives me time to make sure that it's included fully in the report. This report is fairly finalized by July when it goes to my board to start for them to review it. So that's the end of the of my presentation. So the floor is open now if you have questions or comments.
Thank you, Anne. I think that was a very good intro to the Vital Signs report, and I certainly look forward to reading more detail when it does come out. I guess I'll start off with a quick question. As you've been collecting this data, there was a reference in your slide to mobility for ramps, different things. Often, speaking of accessibility, we automatically go towards ramps and wheelchair or stroller or that type of access. Have you had any feedback concerning visually impaired, hearing impaired, other areas, other challenges that people experience?
Yeah, not yet. The survey that to this point in time with residents was really broad, Stuart. So we never got into specifics to that detail. I'm hoping that might be in my next round of conversations. I can start to get more into the nitty-gritty and ask those kind of questions. So no, there haven't been yet.
Not yet, but hopefully.
For sure.
And this report, it's all of this work is every year. Is that correct?
Most years. I started this role in 2020, just before COVID, and I've been doing a report annually since then. So as long as there are reports most years, but there doesn't have to be a report every year. In the past, they mostly came out after census years when there would have been more data to report on. But now we've been able to find more local data, and so there's more to report on an annual basis. So as long as there's enough data to report on, that's useful. There will be annual reports.
All right, very good. And my last comment or question is there any opportunity to look, or maybe you already do this, to compare previous reports to identify changes or improvements, year-over-year changes?
Absolutely. I keep data. I've tracked a lot of the main indicators that we track back to 2006 in most cases. So we're able to see, the trends. And so that wouldn't necessarily, Stuart, be to do with accessibility specifically, though. It's more to do with indicators like income levels, housing prices, health statistics, safety, sort of those broader themes like that.
All right, very good. Well, thank you for the presentation. And other people with questions?
Jeffrey here, if I may. It's Jeffrey.
Yes, go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, Anne, thank you so much for that in-depth discussion with your statistics. I'm a strong believer in data for certain. I haven't had a chance to look at your report and had a chance to review it, but I see that you've kept it general, and as Stu mentioned, we have the access issues there, but more importantly is the communication access as well, which goes in concert with this and be balanced. So I know it might be difficult, but at the same time, the statistics and the data shows a lot of older people here that we have are losing their hearing over time. Then communication becomes an issue, and then we have the potential to access that communication. And there are many reasons, like for emergencies, 911, dissemination of information, which pertain to communication, which highlights the importance of communication access. So the more time that you expand and get into the nitty-gritty of that report, the more it'll become more integrated so that it can be done in concert. So I would be happy to provide you feedback. I'm very, very familiar with that. So just want to make
that would
note.
be wonderful. Thank you so much. So much appreciated. Yes. So that would be the next step. If I would really appreciate that kind of input. If you feel that you've got information that you could share with me. There was a survey, but probably a survey wasn't a good name for us. More of a questionnaire, and it's really not well suited to answering online because it's better suited to having conversations. So I would really welcome if there's a smaller group here or the group that would like to further this conversation after you've had a chance to look at that questionnaire. That would be really helpful to have conversation. We can do that through Zoom if you like.
By all means, Anne, by all means. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. And Councillor McNaughton, you had a question? I see your hands up. And then Irene was trying to get my attention as well. Councillor McNaughton?
Thank you. Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you very much for the presentation. And I'm just wondering, so as you go forward mapping assets and challenges, are you actually using a direct mapping tool, like where members of the public would be able to provide direct mapping, like putting stickies on a map with a note saying, this is what we encounter? Is that something that is already in your tool chest, or is it something that's of interest?
I could do that, Kate. I've been looking more for people to let me know in their wards what's available. I have mapping from our municipality that shows where the social infrastructure actually is. So I already have that mapped.
Well, I'm just wondering, because with Have Your Say, we actually have a tool where people can add their own pins to say, here's what exists here, this is amazing, or here's what exists here, there's a risk there. So I'm wondering, so
that would be great.
Yeah, and I suspect that our county staff in Sarah Harvey's department would probably be, or at least our communication staff would probably be quite happy to consider working on that.
Oh, that would be terrific. Thanks, Kate, for mentioning that. I wasn't aware of that. That reminds me, Stu, you had mentioned to me too, I think it's on Google Maps, that there's a lot of really good resources.
Yes, there are some features that you can turn on Google Maps that show whether a specific business or establishment is accessible, wheelchair accessible, different types of accessibility. And I forget how to turn it on Google Maps, but it certainly is there. And this was, I think, a conversation we had many months ago about that.
It was, and I wanted to follow up on that. So Stu, maybe if you and I have a chance, maybe you could show me how that works.
Yep, no problem.
Thank you.
All right, Irene.
Thank you, Anne, for a really great presentation, and it's quite encouraging to see the accessibility highlighted. I just had some information that I'll forward to you too, but there was one slide where you talk about our strengths in our assets, our parks, our libraries and everything, and I think that's really good, but I think one thing this committee's been working on is a bit of a shopping list. Like if someone came along and said, okay, Prince Edward County, here's $30 million to this municipality, go and make yourself accessible. Do we have the list of what needs to be done? And of course, we came across that KPMG study that was actually an accessibility audit of every building and facility that the county owns. I don't know if you've got that, but the county's decided to do another one to put their price tag on all of that. And at the same time, the county's doing this asset management assessment, you know, what has to be done. So this whole thing about accessibility audits that are required by the Accessibility Act, I think is really key, because unless our parks and our buildings and all of that stuff are accessible in every way, they're not, like, they're only an asset to certain people. And as we're reminded, you know, we're lucky we have these assets. They were done at a time when accessibility wasn't, you know, as far advanced as it is today. And we don't have like $30 million. So somewhere in there is a thing that says our assets are great and wonderful, but until we make them all accessible, we're not going to get anywhere. And I just wondered if that has to be sort of front of mind in all of this discussion. And a second one, which is more of a question, is the, you mentioned that the car-oriented society, you know, part of that sort of urban planning thing is not good, but some of us need cars. You know, like a lot of times I'm, you know, with my some of my back issues and stuff, you know, I couldn't get around, and I often think when I'm in Toronto, it's different. Like I don't need, like, you know, the bus and the subways and the way you get around with their bike lanes and stuff is a lot easier, but then you come home and it's a rural area. So this sort of urban rural stuff, I think, well, I guess we're trying to say that Picton, Bloomfield, Wellington are our urban centers, but you know, really they're not. We're still very rural. And I just wondered if that discussion has to get in there someplace about, for people who do have accessibility issues, to what extent is a car-orientated, you know, planning better in a rural setting than urban?
So maybe, Irene, if I could just respond to that briefly. When I think about conversations I've had with residents who have tried to have input into some of the new developments, for example, that are happening, and you know, we have them springing up all over. They're trying to encourage planners to ensure that those neighborhoods at least are more walkable, to encourage people to be able to socialize more with each other. And if you think about communities without sidewalks, for example, or that don't have good lighting in those communities so they feel safe, or design that has garages right out front and no porches. There used to be that there were porches out front, and so people, you know, would walk along and they'd have more of a chance to socialize with each other. So it could even be that kind of an emphasis when you're looking at development.
And from Jeff here, if I could just add something.
Yes, go ahead. Sorry, who was that?
Okay, Jeff here.
Jeff, okay.
I think a perfect example when you're talking about rural or urban areas, in terms of Bloomfield, Wellington, even Belleville, just to a note, in terms of accessibility, my mom doesn't drive now and is quite ill. And so having to go to all these appointments, going to Oshawa, having to take a train from Belleville, for example. And just funny, today I sent an email saying, is there anything I can book a train for next week from Belleville to Ottawa? Because I'm just learning as well. I thought it'd be nice if Quinte Transit offered that, and they said they were willing, but it would have to be 8:20 in the morning. There was a train, so there'd be a 6 a.m. pickup in order to drop off for 7:20 at the train. So there are some accessibility things out there, but I don't know if it's widely known. And it doesn't target that, but it's not really related to your report, but I was just really impressed that there was a Quinte Transit that was willing to pick up my mom, bring her to the train station to get to those appointments.
For sure. If I can just add to that, community care for seniors, the volunteer drivers will take folks like your mom to cities nearby for medical appointments.
That's wonderful. Yeah, luckily I'm able to most of the time drive my mom around, or I can get her the things that she needs. Luckily, she has me, but it is nice to know for other people, because I think the next few months it's going to be quite busy with the follow-up appointments. So it's great to know that there is a community care drivers out there as well.
And trying to find ways to get this information out to people is always a challenge. There was if someone can remind me of the right name, there was an event at the Wellington Arena each year, a seniors event.
Seniors Active Living Fair.
And that touches on a lot of these issues as well of access. Yes. So that's another good resource to go to. All right, I think we're through with our questions for you, Anne. Thank you very much for your update on the report. And I guess we have to do a motion then that the presentation by Anne Van Vleck, the Vital Signs Coordinator for the County Foundation regarding the Vital Signs Focus Report, be received. And if we have a Kate and Irene, perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
And we're all in favor? And I'm sure that's carried.
Okay.
Next on our agenda is deputations and then comments from the audience. And I don't believe we have any for either one.
Through the chair, correct. There are no deputations or no comments registered.
So we'll continue on to number 9 on the agenda. And that is the report that you were going to mention, I think.
Through the chair, actually, we have Sarah Harvey. She's a report writer, and she'll speak to this. Can we just get a mover and seconder to put it on the floor first, and then Sarah, you can do your overview.
Okay.
And the seconder, or? Yeah, Jeff's hand.
Jeff, I can second from Jeff.
Thank you. So go ahead, Sarah.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Again, it is Sarah. I am returning to you from my last visit in November when I talked about an update on the Access the County project that two of your members were part of the task team for. I don't see them I'm not sure if they're here today, but we had two members from this committee that were the task team for this, and the grant that funded this project completed early 2025. It was January, the first week of January. We had to have everything completed by in terms of spending, but because of the way that our community kind of functions, it was best for businesses that we offer some of the training opportunities in later into January. So the funder gave us permission, as long as we didn't spend any money and it was all pre-spent, we were able to offer, as I mentioned in November, a couple of sessions in middle of January. So other than that, it was all wrapped up on time at the beginning of January of this year. So you'll see in the report that there's a couple of items of business that are pertaining to this project. One is to dissolve the task team because it served its purpose. It was specific to this project. And just to kind of give there's more detail in the report, but a high level sort of overview. I'll mention that as I mentioned in November, we worked with a local experts in the field, Acquium Access, and they were hired as our lead training consultant, and they developed the training materials that were used for the training packages or presentations, as well as you would have all been shared in the last few months, a link to the online component of the training, which was what they called an e-learning module, which was very well received by those who took that. So there's lots of great learning tools that came out of this, and there were people that signed up, and everyone who engaged in the training opportunities gave rave reviews and enjoyed what they did take away. So we've wrapped up the funding portion of this program, and it served as a bit of a pilot project. We ran what we were able to serve in that time frame, and now, as you would have read in the report, what we are proposing is a new deliverable, a new format, where we reach out to targeted groups who already are congregating and meeting, as mentioned in the report, service clubs and groups, to try and catch people where they're already sitting. And rather than the large, over-encompassing, broad presentation, the folks at Acquium Access would like to come back and extend the offering in a more condensed version, where it would be targeted sections of some of the different more specific standards of the AODA, such as communication, employment, and customer service, where they could do 30 to 60, as mentioned in the report, 36 to 60 minute sort of lunchables, as they called it, that would give people an opportunity to do a training session that was specific to a need that they wanted to learn about at any given time. And by any given, I mean when we offered it, but in those time frames that were a little bit less of a commitment than sort of a half-day offering that we were doing in the fall and in January. So that's a bit of a summary of where we're at now. And you'll see in the report that what we'd like to do is take 2,000 of the budget that council has already approved, 7,500 of the municipal accommodation tax that's been set aside for the tourism management plan. So we're just looking for your support use 2,000 of those funds to extend this training in the manner that I've just described. You'll see in the report there are a couple of other options should you choose to give it some time and to think about what you want to do, or there is the option of, as mentioned in the report, to spend that money in another way entirely. But that's what we're proposing. So the items in the report that we're wanting to cover is, like I said, just dissolving that task team and seeking support in the way that we would hope to continue to extend the training for small businesses and nonprofits in Prince Edward County. And hopefully that covers most of what maybe you're looking for outside of just the report itself.
All right, thank you for the overview and all the details in the agenda package and the report and your recommendation. It is an important initiative, and seems like it was very successful as well. So do we have questions for Sarah? Irene?
Thanks, Sarah. Oops, sorry, I'm double. I have to turn my sound down. Okay, is that better? No. Shut it off.
I think if you turn your YouTube off, is usually the solution to that.
You know, I've had to turn. Is that it? Wonderful, thank you. Sorry, I was having trouble hearing, and we don't get Jeff's printing at the top, so, but we do get it on Zoom, so I decided to go back onto Zoom. Anyway, Sarah, thanks for that, and it's been quite a year. And I just wondered, because I haven't heard from Carolyn or Olivia for a while, and I emailed Carolyn to see where things were at. And I just wondered, because you want to get rid of the task, like not get rid of them, but resign, like let the task team resign, but we're still going to use some money for training and make decisions. I assume making some decisions about how that works. So I just wondered why we wouldn't keep the task team going if we're going to have money spent on that training and make decisions around it.
So the task team was a function of the grant, and it's a procedure of Becky, or if Becky's able to correct me on this, I've been told that it's a procedure that's governmental, that because the task team was does not needed to have a terms of reference, and it's through it was attached to the program that was attached to the grant timeline. The task team itself is no longer needed, but like we could certainly continue to seek consultation through the same individuals and through this committee. It's just that the task team itself was for a specific purpose, which was that function, that timeline.
So that's not the answer I wanted here, but it sounds very procedural, and it seems that if you've got a good working group and there's work continuing, that there must be some procedural, easy way to just say that the task team can continue beyond the grant, as long as because it's the same kind of work. And I'm just thinking about Carolyn, who is our business representative on the committee and does liaison with businesses. I just think I'm uncomfortable with saying the task team is done. I don't think they're done if we're recommending money that they continue. So whether you want to start a new working group and include them, I don't know. You know, the procedural stuff can be a barrier at times. And in this case, I think that's what's happening. So my recommendation would be that if we do the $2,000 and agree to that, because, you know, people have to remember that if it was only a $7,500 budget, and I didn't know council had done this, that they said to the staff, you can have the $7,500 to do some accessibility stuff, but you have to do it in consultation with the accessibility committee. I feel like we should just say thank you to council that they remembered, you know, to keep us in the picture. I think that was really terrific news when I read that in your report. But if we are committing $2,000 of that small pool to continue this, then I think we have to have our group continue, our committee members to continue to be involved with decisions on how that plays out.
Okay, I would say that particular working group or task team, I've been told it needs, because it is tied to the that program and that grant funded situation, that needs to be dissolved. But like you have suggested, there's no reason why you can't assign a fresh working group to consult with the extension of this programming. I would also say that because I don't believe Caro and Olivia are in the room, to commit them to extending is not particularly fair. But if you wanted to engage and restart a similar working group for advising on this type of work, I don't see that being an issue. It's just, but I also should speak for them in saying that I don't feel like it's right to commit them to something that they probably weren't planning. This was a project with a start and a finish that they put their hand up for, and I don't think it would be right to keep them going into something that they probably aren't here to speak on.
And that's a fair comment. I think Becky had a comment as well.
Yeah, just through the chair to speak to what Sarah already mentioned, it does look like the Access the County Task Team terms of reference specify that it was for the grant-funded Access the County program. So if it looks like that work is being done, I do agree that this staff recommendation is suitable, and we can just potentially speak at a future meeting whether we want to form those members back onto another task team in the future.
And the purpose would be to help guide the project going forward.
Does that sound right, Sarah?
Yes. Or in response to the comment, absolutely.
Would it make sense to defer this item to the next meeting, but to defer the motion to the next meeting so that to give Sarah time to work with Carolyn and Olivia about what's the best way to proceed from their perspective, or to hear from them?
But I am a bit hesitant since they're not in the room. Becky, did you have another comment?
The only thing I was going to mention, if that's the case, I suggest breaking the recommendation up and for each clause separately decide how you want to proceed. However, I think staff recommendation is suitable. It's the will of the committee how they proceed there.
So what has to get passed tonight?
Sarah, ideally all three recommendations would get approved tonight, and revisiting whether appointment to another task team at a future meeting would be more suitable versus, let's say, removing clause 2 and deferring that to another meeting, correct?
I would say in the reverse, if you wanted to defer 3, which is what that you think about if you want to spend the $2,000, because as one of the other options mentioned in the report, one of the options is that you don't need to make a decision now and provide that support. But like Becky mentioned, the task team does need to be dissolved as it was tied to the funded portion of the grant program. But like I said, in terms of if you wanted to assign task or work committee members to be a new working group that consults on how this were to be extended, that's fine.
Through the chair again, Irene, can you just clarify, you're concerned with the dissolution of the Access the County Task Team, Clause 2, correct? That's where you're...
Yeah, I think if I understand what Sarah's suggesting, that we would pass 1 and 2, but we would defer 3 pending a discussion with Olivia and Carolyn about how to form another working group for that continuing work. So I don't know if you want to defer it or if you want to say, yeah, I think we should defer it till we find out where they're at with it, so that they can regroup and come back with a recommendation about whether or not they want to see continuing involvement from the committee or just leave it up to staff to do. So I said, so I'm okay with, let's move 1 and 2, but defer 3. We could have it in the motion that we defer item 3, pending a report back from committee members Carolyn, Olivia, and Sarah about how to proceed with what's recommended there.
I agree with that approach. I really don't want to, as we mentioned before, without Caroline and Olivia's input, we can't suggest that they continue this work.
It's just going to be tied in with Carolyn's continuing work with the business community, so that's why I don't want to lose that thread there. So will I move that you want me to make the motion?
Yeah, the first 2
So
points.
I move that the report of the Community Services Programs Interest Department dated May 5th, 2025 regarding Access to County Program.
Irene, sorry. We do already have a mover and seconder, Sarah and Jeff, on the full motion. You would just be making an amending motion to defer clause number 3. So it would just be
do you want me to do that first?
That's all you would be doing.
Oh, we're not going to, but we have to pass point 1 and 2, right?
Yeah, so Sarah and Jeff already moved and seconded it. It's already on the floor. What you would be doing is putting an amending motion to defer clause number 3.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, so I move to defer clause number 3 in order to get feedback from Carolyn, Olivia, and Sarah about how best to continue this work.
Perfect. Wonderful. Yeah. So then we would just need a seconder on Irene's motion, the amending one. Oh, it looks like Jeff
Jeff
seconded.
So Jeff moved,
Yeah.
yes.
So then we're going to call the vote on the amending motion. All those in favor? And that carries. And then if there's no further discussion on this topic, then you would call the vote on the main motion as amended.
So then all those in favor for the main motion as amended.
Beauty. Carried.
All right.
Perfect. Next item.
Thank you. Thank you for keeping us on track there.
Thank you, Sarah.
All right, thank you, Sarah, and we'll move on to the next point, 9.2, the 2025 National Accessibility Week planning.
Yeah. Through the chair, that's me. So as all committee members saw, there is a plan that I have revised since our last meeting and attached to the agenda. I did want to request committee members' assistance if there is any feedback I could get on the "Did you know" facts, just for the social media awareness campaign. If I could have anybody, if they have any suggestions before the end of the week, just send those through to me so that we can get those through to the comms team. It does look like we're going to be able to hold a Accessibility Awareness Day on Friday, May 30th at the Picton Library in partnership with Community Living. Still have a few of the details to work out. We're focusing on interactive activities, so navigating downtown sidewalks in a wheelchair, maybe hand out a map. People can take turns in the chair, and then on the reverse, take turns pushing the chair through various obstacles downtown. Also, other tools on display, low vision glasses, large print keyboard and mouse, pedal desks, magnifier, etc. Open to any suggestions or any ideas if committee members have anything.
And you're hoping for this feedback by the end of this week?
If possible, yes, please.
And should we just email directly to you?
Yeah, if you just email me any ideas that you have. Just what currently is on the plan is what was developed last year. I'd like to kind of do a refresh and new ideas. Anything that anybody has anything to share that we could kind of promote this, that would be wonderful.
And I'm just looking over the attachment in the agenda. Does it mention the Friday, May 30th event at the Picton Library?
Yeah, if you look under item 7, it's not really highlighted there. I was actually hoping to have some sort of graphic to be able to display, but hopefully I can circulate that at a future date. But underneath number 7, you can see the details there.
All right, perfect. I missed that. Thank you. Do we have any comments or suggestions at this time, or should we?
And through to the chair or through the chair to committee. If nobody has any comments now, that's okay. You can just reach out afterwards.
I just had one question if I could. I noticed that we added the school board work. And I'm not opposed to that, but I've always been sensitive to the fact that they, by law, have to have their own accessibility advisory committee. And, you know, there's concerns in the school board sector as there is in the municipal sector. I'm going to send you some changes because there's, you know, a few changes I saw, and I think we could add more things that the county should be bragging about. And I'm thinking that like the Picton Playground, which is totally accessible. It's on the Ontario Playground website. And then there's, Stu found out the curling club is totally accessible, which we didn't know. And so there's stuff like that. And I just, so I will send you that, some of those thoughts, Becky. But I just wasn't sure on this, because we wanted to make connections to the school board, but they have their sort of own, set their own work. So I just wondered why you were including them.
Through the chair, I didn't add that. That was from the previous plan. It was on there before.
Yes, Councillor McNaughton?
Thank you. I was just thinking, as Irene was speaking, I thought those highlights in our community, those wonderful assets, are finding ways to shine the spotlight would be really great. And I had actually just sent a suggestion to Becky saying maybe some of the great tools at the library that are going to be profiled, and some of that event on the 30th could be something that our communications team attends and actually profiles with short videos on social media. And perhaps if there's a spokesperson for this committee or for the Accessibility Day activities, that they could actually do a short video profile that could also be uploaded. I think that would be, I think it would be fun and engaging in a way that, you know, we don't always embark on it on our social media. And I'm sure the mayor would be game, but anyone from this committee could be a great spokesperson too.
Okay, thank you for the input and the comments. So I think that finishes that discussion, and do we need to read this motion then?
Yeah, we would just need a mover and seconder that the Accessibility Advisory Committee discussion on celebrating National Accessibility Week 2025 be received.
Sarah? And Irene?
All those in favor? And that carries.
All right, thank you. And the next section of our agenda is the planning file review. We have 2 completed that are attached in the package. And Irene, were you going to give a quick review of those?
Sure. I think I'm assuming people have had a chance to look at them and read them. And earlier, Stu had mentioned the meetings we had with the planners, because we're worried that we keep saying the same things over and over on these. But the first one was cottages. They're going to add, I think, 10 cottages on County Road 1, which is over near Consicon, close to Consicon. And, you know, we're worried about the size of the cottages are very small, so it's going to be hard for them to make them accessible. And some of the layout, like on the washrooms, are not accessible. So there's some concern there, and we mentioned the lighting and some about the exterior paths of travel, whether there's gravel. Hopefully, the building code stuff will click in for the internal parts of the plans for those. So that was one set of comments. And the second one is over at the No Frills parking lot in Picton. They're going to expand. They're going to add some businesses on the west end, then expand the parking lot. They're going to put in a fast food thing in the middle of the east end of the parking lot. So we were concerned about whether or not they've got, we'd like to see more accessible parking there. And there's some concern about pedestrian safety as people are crossing Highway 33. So we've sent those comments in, and I would move that the committee that the Accessibility Committee planning files on Lakeview Cottages and Choice REIT No Frills be approved.
There's no comments. Do we have a seconder, I guess? Sorry, Kate, your hand's up.
Yes.
Was there a question or?
No, sorry, I was just raising my hand a second.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
So all those in favor? Any opposed? Not that I can see. So that's carried. Thanks, Irene. And the last section, I believe, is the work plan discussion. And that is also included in the package. And the work plan is always at the bottom of our agenda package. And there were two main things we wanted to discuss, I believe.
Yeah, through the chair, if you'd like, I'll go first and then committee members can ask questions afterwards. I just wanted to provide an update with respect to the training and the accessibility lens, twofold, but yet all tied together. I'm going to introduce Olivia Fox, is connected virtually. She's another staff member here with the county. There she is. And she's been tasked with creating a terms of reference for an internal accessibility group that ties in all the departments and for the procurement of the training for the DEI. Now, the clerk's office has experienced a little bit of a transition, which has resulted in some workflow management issues or challenges. So we've asked Olivia to help us with making sure that some of the objectives of the committee can be satisfied before the end of the term. Most specifically, I know you guys have been long awaiting the DEI training. The former CAO has spoken with Olivia on what she was looking for there. And then also I met with Jeffrey Beatty about the accessibility lens, and my interpretation of where we would like this to go is for it to be implemented across the entire corporation. And for that reason, we would like to see departmental liaisons kind of tasked with their specific subject matter, such that, let's say, the facilities department would have a staff member that would be able to provide feedback and be that connecting link between the two. Same with operations, development services, et cetera, et cetera. So Olivia has been gracious enough to agree to help, and you'll be seeing more of her at these committee meetings. If anyone has any questions, the other thing I will just draw into that is, Irene, to your point about asset management, we think that this kind of setup will help kind of achieve that with creating those communications between all departments with accessibility in mind. So I believe that that will all be tied in together with the asset management plan coming forward. And yeah, happy to answer any questions.
I have a question. It's Sarah speaking. So you briefly touched on the DEI training and acknowledged that this has been a demand of our committee for some time now. But I didn't catch a timeline with your update. So I just want to recognize that our committee will be wrapping up within a year and a half, give or take. So with that in mind, how soon can we get this training done?
Olivia might be able to provide a better estimate with regards to timeline. My understanding with consultation with the CAO prior to her departure was we were hoping to have at least the procurement established by this point. I don't believe it will take too much longer to action. I did pull the previous when the committee's recommendation went to council and then the final motion that came out of that. So the intention's still the same. Training would happen at this committee level first and then rolled out not just through to all the committees, but also to all staff as well. So unfortunately, I don't know if I have an answer for you, Sarah, with respect to timeline. And I can't commit to expediting it, but everything in my power to get it across the finish line for sure.
Not sure what that was, but
Olivia, I think your audio might try talking again, maybe? No, we can't hear. It still doesn't show audio on your end, Olivia. Oh, it's moving, but we can't hear you. Let me see if I can turn you up.
Okay, I changed it again. Did that work?
There we go. Yep, we have you.
Sorry, there was like 3 different ones going on. Hi, I'm Olivia. So sorry about the malfunction there. I'm still really new. Sorry, Sarah. I'm still trying to learn the ins and outs. I'm hoping Becky and I to meet like this week or early next week to just try and wrap my brain around what we're doing, and hopefully I can bring a timeline really shortly. I did have a meeting with Marcia before she left, so I'm still just trying to figure it out. From my end, I'm also working on the asset management plan at the moment as well. So still, I'm hoping to have a timeline to you guys as soon as possible, if that makes any better.
Yes, thank you and welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited.
all right, thank you. Do we have any questions at this time? Yes, Irene?
Well, I'm still not clear on the accessibility lens. I'm sorry, I didn't understand the timeline as well with that, because I thought that part of the objective was that any time stuff is being brought to council, that part of that report would say, and here's the accessibility part of it. It might not be, we're fixing a road and what's accessibility about that? Well, it's the type of material you're using is what's important to us. So you know what I mean, like that, so that there should be a part of all that work that's done, or there's money going to be spent on something. What's the accessibility piece? We get environmental input assessments. We get heritage assessments. I think we need an accessibility assessment. And Jeff, I don't know if that's too simplistic an approach to the accessibility lens. I know it can be a lot more, but I'm just thinking in the beginning, because there's a couple of things I wanted to bring up on the work plan. So I'll give the example, the facility condition assessment. This Roth consultants are doing another accessibility audit of buildings and everything the county owns. So where's that fitting in with the, this, the stuff they're doing right now, which is risk assessment on all of the facilities? So I'm just not sure, like, are you recommending to council that staff be required to put in that accessibility piece the way they do environment and heritage, or when does this come about and how? Have you had that discussion?
Yeah, through the chair, I guess to clarify, the intention is for the internal departmental working group is that they are using that accessibility assessment or lens on everything that they touch, whether it be a staff report coming through to council or when they're looking at procurement or so. I believe that the terms of reference for that group will establish that, and that was the intention of where this was going. Again, though, we haven't had an opportunity to meet to discuss further, and I do appreciate your points because we'll definitely take those into consideration.
So that's an internal working group within staff?
Yes, so that's my understanding, is that the CAO directed Olivia to work on a terms of reference for an internal accessibility group that across all departments, where each subject matter expert would have a liaison that would be assigned to that working group, and then each department would be able to, that person would report back to them and they would report to the committee, vice versa.
Thank you. And
to clarify, similar to what Sarah mentioned about the city of Belleville having their own coordinator, it's this group would be doing that for the entire corporation.
thank you. And Councillor McNaughton has your hand up.
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to talk about what we're looking at the Environmental Advisory Committee, and in concert with the staff task team that is set up quite similarly to what Olivia is talking about right now. And Olivia's got some experience with that Green Task Force as well, because there isn't actually an environmental lens either. And we've been talking about the easiest, cleanest way to impose an environmental and climate risk or climate action lens. And what we've discovered, and we haven't quite, staff are looking at it right now, and took it to the CAO before she left. I don't know if it went anywhere. I'll find out in the next few weeks. What we found out was there's a potentially extremely simple way to do this, which is in the template for reports, there could be a field, whatever anyone's writing a report, there could be a field that just says climate implications, and it could be that simple. So accessibility implications, it could be that simple. And it could, and if there's no implication for the report, you just write none or not applicable and move on. But if there are implications, whether they're positive or negative, the sidewalk closure bylaw that we have to undertake every few years for winter snow clearing, because, would have accessibility implications because it would cause accessibility risk for members of the public who might live on a certain street where we can't clear the sidewalks. And how do we manage that? It could be something that's that simple. That's something that I think it would be relatively easy for this group, if that's the easiest way to do it, for this group to action. And then each department would have to create their own momentum, probably. I'm just throwing that out there so that you guys are aware of what we're doing with the staff task force for environment, because I think there's a lot that can be shared between the two groups, as far as keeping it clean, simple, and actionable.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. Oh, sorry.
Very good, thank you. So is it my understanding then, Olivia, that this is part of what you're going to be doing for, from an accessibility point of view within the staff working group or task team?
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, yes, correct. When the goal is to meet with everyone in the group and we come up with ideas on how we can work together to kind of work side by side with the DI group and this committee, and bringing in this training and how it can connect to each of the different departments by having some representative from each department there. I also sit on, as Councillor McNaughton was mentioning, I also sit on the Green Task Force, where we also do this there. So I have experience, and we just are able to talk about how each group is, for example, in the Green Task Force, how each group can look at climate change. And we're creating a plan right now, and they're each bringing their lenses and how that can help shape the climate action plan. So it's going to be the same thing with this group, is my understanding. Yes.
Can I just elaborate? It's Kate speaking again, if that's okay, Stu.
Yes, of course. Continue.
Thank you. One of the challenges that I think we have faced, and I would recommend for this committee going forward that Olivia, you consider this, you and your colleagues consider this. One of the problems we had is that we were sort of separated into lanes, a staff lane and a public and council lane, and it became a real barrier to getting stuff done in a more comprehensive, informed, and collaborative fashion. I think it was purposefully done with the understanding that staff could move forward on municipal projects well and quickly. However, there was overlap and duplication, and we have found that it's working better. We're collaborating more now. It's not perfect collaboration. It's not the Environmental Advisory Committee directly collaborating with the staff task force, but we now have working group members that participate with the staff group on a regular basis, so that there's quite a lot of collaborative energy, and and we've got staff attending our meetings, and thank you to Olivia for being here. We've had a lot more success moving forward when everyone kind of got on the same page and were able to bind together as one big team. So I would recommend that we find those inroads for collaboration going forward, so that we're all, and I think that's the idea. I think like finding as many as possible to make it a bit of a seamless effort. It will be more productive, and we'll be able to work a bit faster. It's been really exciting and productive since the relationship strengthened between the Environmental Advisory Committee and working groups and the Green Task Force.
All right, thank you for all those comments. I think it's very, very encouraging that we're going to continue to work more closely and find ways to work together on these topics. And that's what I was leaning towards when I was talking about in the very beginning, an update from the planning group. It's all to all of our benefit to work together in this way. Do we have any other discussion or comments on the work plan? Irene?
I'm just wondering, the discussion we've just been having, would it be appropriate to request that the committee appoint 2 people to the internal staff working group along the lines of the environmental committee?
Through the chair to Irene, it might be best to wait till the terms of reference are drafted, and then committee members all have an opportunity to review that before we appoint members to it specifically.
But wouldn't you want our opinion on the terms of reference? That's pretty critical, right? Your terms of reference are your mandate.
Yeah, and because this is internal, I suspect that the terms of reference would come back to the committee for review, and then once that's adopted, then. So I just think it's a little premature to appoint members. We also barely met quorum, so there's quite a few committee members that aren't present for the opportunity to be appointed to that.
Could I just ask, Becky, because we've appointed Jeff as our person working on all of this. So where is Jeff fitting into this then? Like, how does he give you the benefit of all his knowledge? And if he's not on that committee or not part of the terms of reference drafting?
So when Jeff and I met, our discussion did lead into, oh, sorry, Jeff, did you want to go ahead? Yeah, our discussion was that he would be involved in this and with staff consultation.
I'm happy to answer any questions you have, but or we can talk about it in general. I prefer, to be involved and it kind of be an afterthought to move forward. You know, I always believe in try to avoid those afterthoughts and to move forward collaboratively for sure and be part of the procedure and the process. So I'm happy to be involved if that allows, and do whatever I can to help out.
Thank you, Jeff. Yes, through the chair to Jeff and Irene. In our consultation, when Jeff and I met, that was part of our discussion, is that he would be involved in this staff consultation piece of it. Again, to your request, I do think it's premature when we don't even have a working group name or anything to appoint members to at this point.
And Jeff is saying that's fine. That's quite fine.
I'll stop asking questions about it. I think the committee can tell I'm uncomfortable. Collaboration means that the two get together, and I think that when you're doing terms of reference, that's the critical piece. Now, if you're saying, well, we'll bring the stuff back, like Jeff can have some input, and then that we can change the terms of reference if we don't like it, but it's a very long process. But anyways, I hope it goes I hope we get there. I'm sure we will.
Well, you bring up good points, and we're looking for more collaboration. So if it's too early to formally ask people to be assigned, then I don't think it's too early to informally reach out to Olivia and make sure that she knows that we're interested and engaged on this topic, and that when we do have the appropriate timing, we can officially appoint people to
Now, on the work plan, Stu, I had
included.
2 other items that I wanted to highlight on the work plan and ask for some action on it. Should I move to that?
Yep, I think we're finished with that other discussion, so go ahead.
So the first one is, we have on our work plan, point number 7, facility condition assessment as a high priority. And this, has to do with the KPMG study. It has to do with these Roth consultants doing their work on an accessibility audit. What is it going to cost to do all of these? And then in the meantime, this risk assessment stuff's moving ahead. And I'm going to request that we ask that the director involved in the facility conditions assessment and that this accessibility audit report to our committee on an update of where everything is at. Even if it's not finished, I think we need to hear from her on what's happening with that.
Through the chair to Irene, good, because she's coming to the next meeting. I've already reached out, and she couldn't make it to this one, unfortunately, so they'll be providing an update at the next meeting.
Thank you so much, Becky. Appreciate that. The other one is an item on parks and open spaces parking audit, number 9. I'm looking at the January one, but it's parks and open audit. That's that parking audit we did. And that guy was so fabulous. He came and said, for every beach, for every road, here's what we need to do for parking. And there was an agreement that they would do Wellington, Bloomfield, and Picton, which is fabulous. You see those streets on Picton Main Street. And so Catalina had said to us that for the beaches and the parks, that was going to be part 2, and that there hopefully would be money in this year's budget to do that. Like, the audit's been done, we know what has to be done. We just need the internal money assigned. So I just wondered if we could get an update on that from that group.
I don't know if I have an update for that per se, but the parking audit, that's also scheduled for the next meeting, an update. So I think that satisfies that request.
All right, very good. Those were the two high priority things that we wanted to follow up on, right? Okay. Concerning, I have some just general comments about the action plan that we have in our package here, and I want to work with Becky to find ways to mostly improve the visibility for a lot of what's here. We've heard comments from Irene about who is responsible and what's the timeline, and during the discussion about the training, we also asked about the timeline, and I'd like to try and make these questions and these issues a little bit more visible in our paperwork, so that when we're reviewing these things, we have a better understanding of what we should focus on. So there are a couple of changes that I'll be working with Becky on, and at a future date, I hope to share those with the committee. Any other question? Oh, that comment goes the same for our action plan, and further down in our package, we have the staff accessibility action plan. There's a lot of things on here. There's a lot of work going on. And then there's some things that have been parking lot and deferred, and there's just a lot there. And I wanted to bring some clarity and visibility to what's actually being worked on and when we can expect some results from these issues. That's my comments about the work plan and action plan. If there are no other comments, I don't see any hands up. So we move that the Accessibility Advisory Committee discussion on the work plan be received. Irene and Sarah? So all in favor? And probably no one opposed. So that passes. And looks like that brings us to our next meeting, which would be July 14th. And then if there's a motion to adjourn the meeting. A mover? Sorry, I don't know all the language. And we need a seconder then? Kate? All right. I'll going to say all opposed. All in favor? All right, well, thank you, everyone. And brings our meeting to a close.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you,
I
everyone.
want to thank the interpreters and thank everyone for the